Hi. Welcome back to the channel. It's Resident Internet Psychic Medium and Spiritual Advisor, and this morning I woke up, had some thoughts, and figured that today would be the day I chose violence. So listen, I have, for a very long time now, at least over a year, have told myself that I was going to remain quiet. I was going to be quiet about a situation, but I am displeased. I have a bone to pick with the spiritual community here on this YouTube platform and on a lot of social media platforms. And if I'm going to be quite honest, some of you watching may be one of the bones that I actually have to pick. I am displeased with what I'm seeing going on. And for a long time, I thought, you know what, Mr. Green, just stay out of it. Don't start none, won't be none. And then I woke up and I was like, no, I'm going to start some. I'm going to start it. And because nobody else is starting it and it needs to be. And so I am going to be the pioneer in that sense because I got bones and a lot of displeasure and nobody's calling anybody else out on their bullshit. Now, I have always been the type of person that's been like, you know what? Your practice is your practice and everybody else has their own practice and everybody do what they want to do. And as long as you're staying out of my business, I'll stay out of your business and vice versa or whatever. But what I'm starting to see is that I can no longer stay out of your business because your business is now affecting my business. And I have a problem with that. The issue that I'm starting to see on these platforms that I do not like is that it is so painfully obvious and clear that these people that we have now, spiritual workers, whether they're a psychic, a medium, I've seen this happen with some astrologers, especially the tarot card readers. When I tell you there is no ethics or moral code, there is no basis of upstanding character. We've got people on the internet running amok and they are playing by no rules. And the consequence of playing by no rules is that other people are now impacted by that. We've got practitioners on the internet that are using their platform where they're being seen by hundreds of thousands of people and they have no ethics in regard to how they practice. In regard to how they interact with the public. There is no moral code at all. These people are out here running amok. And that's not correct. And that's not right. And the problem that I have with this is that you do have practitioners like me who take the craft really seriously, who take how they interact with the public really seriously, and who take the responsibility that they hold to the public really seriously. And there's also a lot of practitioners on this platform that take it seriously and they do the same thing because I see them. The problem that I have is that we have a lot of people, and it's starting to seem like we have more people who don't take it seriously than we do that are now making the practice cheap. And they are giving people like me a bad reputation and a bad name. There is no code for how they are behaving on the internet. And what is happening is that they are scaring the bejesus out of people. You've got tarot readers on the internet saying things like, I can see here in the cards you're being followed by dark forces. Why would you say that? Why would you say that to somebody? Why would you scare somebody like that and then give them no tools on how to sort it out? Have the nerve to end the video like, you know, that was your reading for today. Please like, share, and subscribe. But you don't give the person any tool where they can walk away and protect themselves. And now you've got people out here who don't actually know how the metaphysical works, listening to strangers who are fear-mongering on the internet. They don't know where to go for accurate information. The way the algorithm works, if you watch one video of somebody fear-mongering, it's going to suggest more videos of other people fear-mongering. So then you get pigeonholed into a side of YouTube full of people that are convincing you that you've got evil spirit attachments to you, and you can't even find the light side of YouTube because the algorithm isn't recommending those videos. And now you're home alone at night trying to go to sleep, but you're scared because you feel like you have an attachment to you that you can't get rid of because some asshole that was reading a tarot card who, by the way, is not that great at it, okay? And also never properly studied. And because they never properly studied, they never picked up the code of ethics that actually go along with reading, right? They maybe picked up a deck 2 weeks ago. Now they're all over the internet. And there are people that are listening to these people. And that person has no personal code of ethics or moral character that makes them go, oh my God, someone is listening to me and they actually may take whatever I'm saying seriously. There is no consideration about how that person has an ability to negatively affect and impact someone's life. And then what happens is when that person does find the light side of the algorithm and they stumble across Mystic Rain, now I'm getting messages from people that are scared shitless, and I'm now going in reversing the shit that some asshole did. So yes, I got a bone to pick. And I see this mostly with American YouTubers, American spiritual workers, whether or not they identify as a psychic or a medium or a tarot card reader or whatever. I see it more so on that side. And the reason for this is because in the US, there is not a set standard of practice when it comes to this thing, okay? So I'm going to give you guys a history lesson, all right? When I first officially started learning how to develop the craft and practice it and hone it properly in order to then use it for the public, I lived in the UK at the time. And so I formally trained in the UK. The UK actually has mystery schools where you can train in an environment that is controlled, that has existed for hundreds of years. You can go train at institutions in the metaphysics, right? And because of that, there's a code of ethics. The UK also has laws that have been amended and repealed since the 1500s that govern witchcraft. The issue in the United States is that that doesn't exist. There is no body of laws that govern witchcraft, and therefore nothing has been ingrained into the society about how someone should act or behave when it comes to things like this. And so you have people who are just doing whatever the hell they want, not realizing that no, there are cultures and societies where people like me are governed, and there is an expectation for how you behave with the general public, how you do business, what you tell people. You cannot just send people off scared. Things like that get you prosecuted in certain countries. So this is what we're going to do in this video. I'm taking you all back to law school because we got to sort this shit out. So listen. The UK has a set of governing laws, or though it did. A lot of them have been repealed. And so because they've been repealed, not so much anymore, but what has happened is it's created ethics, a code of behavior. So let's start from the beginning, and I'm going to run you through the centuries. Now, why are we dealing with the UK and we're not dealing with the US? Because the UK is a much older civilization than the US. It's an older country. A lot of the things that happen in the US is because of something that happened in the UK, and then the lesson was brought over here by the colonizers into the US, okay? It's a much older country. They've already figured it out. So I'm taking you back to 1542, where Parliament passed the Witchcraft Act, which defined witchcraft as a crime punishable by death. Now, what is witchcraft? Witchcraft is the summoning of evil spirits, right? And it even has to do with magic and sorcery. And as the years have gone on in the UK, the definition of witchcraft got more and more and more defined, right? So when it was first came out, the definition was just like someone that works or summons evil spirits or whatever. And this was a rule that was ushered by the church. So even though it was passed by Parliament, we have to understand that like in the 1500s, we're not talking about separation of church and state in the 1500s, right? And so it is being ushered by the Church of England, right? And it got passed through Parliament banning witchcraft. That act then got amended, the Witchcraft Act of 1562. This was when the definition of the craft or the practice started to be sort of boiled down and refined a little bit more. And so this act, it provided that anyone who should use, practice, or exercise any witchcraft, enchantment, charm, or sorcery, whereby any person shall be killed or destroyed, right, was guilty of a felony without the benefit of clergy and was to be put to death, meaning you had to die and know you could not see a priest beforehand. Okay? That is how serious they were when it came to people and practicing. After that, another law was passed in 1604, and the act that was originally amended, the Witchcraft Act of 1562, they transferred the trial of witches, the process, from the church to the courts. So originally it was the church that was prosecuting witches, really, which was like older women who didn't follow the status quo at that time. They weren't necessarily witches, right? But it transferred the prosecution of those people from the church to the courts, because the prosecution originally lived with the church. It wasn't a legal thing at that point, but it moved it into the courts. Now, in the between time, different areas of Great Britain had different witchcraft acts, right? So Scotland had its own version of the Witchcraft Act. Ireland had its own version of the Witchcraft Act. And they all went into effect prior to 1604. Now, part of the movement of the laws during that time was due to King James I, who was reigning at that point in time. This person had a real interest in the esoteric and even published a book about it. So the laws changed a lot during that time. Fast forward like 100 or so years, in 1736, Parliament repealed the Witchcraft Act, and that act ended up repealing all the laws against witchcraft. So the laws that imposed the felony and like the death penalty, all of that got repealed. And what they did instead was start imposing fines. Depending on the severity of what someone was doing, you could also face imprisonment, but it reduced the punishment of death. And the fines and the imprisonments were to be imposed on people specifically who claimed to have magical powers. So it went from someone being accused of practicing witchcraft, which means it could have literally just been a woman who had a disagreement with a man. She didn't necessarily have to be a witch or practice any form of witchcraft. It went from the accusation, which the accusation alone was enough to end the life, right, to anyone who claimed to have any form of magical power, and then reduced the sentence down to a fine and sometimes imprisonment. When this act was introduced into Parliament, it wasn't taken seriously. At that time, it was a time where people heavily believed in science. The influence of the church was waning a little bit. And so the idea that someone could claim to have magical powers, it almost felt like a waste of time to even bring it up in Parliament. And so the MPs in Parliament at the time actually laughed at it, but it passed. After that, in 1824, there was another act that was passed by Parliament called the Vagrancy Act. Part 4, or Section 4 of this particular act, also then included fortune telling, astrology, and spiritualism to become punishable offenses. This was then repealed by the Fraudulent Medium Act of 1951. 1951 is very recent, right? Like, a lot of you have parents or grandparents that are alive that were born prior to 1951. So you're talking about an act that was passed about mediums and the fraudulent nature of mediums or people claiming to be a medium in this lifetime. It was passed in 1951. Now, this law prohibited a person from claiming to be a psychic, a medium, or other spiritualist while, and this is the key part, attempting to deceive and to make money from the deception, in parentheses, other than solely for the purpose of entertainment, which is how this community gets the disclaimer of entertainment purposes only. Because if you were out there saying, oh, I'm a medium, and you did not have that disclaimer of I'm for entertainment purposes only, you could be prosecuted under the Fraudulent Mediums Act of 1951. Now, this continues to go on and on and on. That was eventually repealed by the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading Regulations, which implemented the EU Unfair Commercial Practices Directive, right? Now, whether or not that's something that's still used, I'm not sure, because the UK is not part of the EU anymore. I don't live in the UK anymore, so I'm not entirely sure which legal system it's following, and it's not my jurisdiction anymore, so I don't really care, right? But what that is showing you is that there has always been a timeline, and what it was ultimately repealed by that brought it into modern day age, where the laws no longer said things like medium or witchcraft. It said consumer protection from unfair trading regulations, meaning people taking advantage of you in order to get profit. People using being a psychic or being a medium or working with evil spirits as a way to profit off of you, to gain something from you. And all those laws dating back to the 1500s have been enforced and put in place in order to stop it, bringing it to present day and age. And the most recent one is from 2008, where it all got moved under protection from unfair trading regulations, right? And so because of this, particularly in the UK, what it created was a culture of, one, not wanting to be prosecuted under these laws, but two, it created a culture of ethics to prevent the prosecution under these laws. So one of those things that you got was the disclaimer of, this is for entertainment purposes only. But another thing you got to prevent against unfair trading was it created a situation where spiritual practitioners in the UK are in the habit of being very transparent with their practice. They are more transparent about what they can and cannot do. They are more transparent about what they will and will not do. And more than anything, at the top of the list, they have made some kind of pledge to do harm to none. This is actually such a big deal in the UK at one point in time that there were like groups of mediums that would organize and assemble in order to fight the new regulations, because those people were legitimate and what they did was legitimate. And they did not plan on harming or taking advantage of the situation or taking advantage of people. But because you had these bad apples, you had all of these laws that were then created. And now these people who were genuine were now subjected to it. And at that point, you couldn't even accept a gift. If you tried to give a tarot reading to somebody and they gave you a gift, you could be punishable under those laws. This is because the people that were using it for personal gain, the people that were not actually genuine with their craft, were actually using it to hurt people, to scare people out of money, to scare people out of resources. You see this happening today when sometimes a reader will see, oh, I see a curse. They'll go through an entire reading, get all the way to the end after you paid all your money, and then say, oh my God, I see a generational curse on your whole family and now it's haunting you. I can get rid of it for you though, but you need to pay me $3,000, but do it fast. Do it fast or you're going to get got. And what happens, because people that don't really understand metaphysics, because it's not like it's taught in schools, are now scared and they are falling victim to this, falling victim to these schemes and these scams. And people like me who are genuine in the craft have to now take the backlash because you got other people that are profiting and taking advantage. And the crazy thing about this is that I see a lot of these channels on YouTube, and I don't know why. It could be because of my channel niche that it pops up in my algorithm that other people that do spiritual channel niches. The issue is that I don't think the algorithm is all that great at really trying to decipher between light and dark. And so because of that, every once in a while, I'll see a video with the dark, right? And when I say dark, I mean like someone with a darker personality, right? Pop up and I'm like, ooh, and then so I click not interested. But people that don't understand metaphysics and how it works may be intrigued. If you read a thumbnail and then the caption and it's like, who's talking about you behind your back, because that's how it starts. What energy do you have following you around, following you? Pick a card reading. And now you have people picking on these things and clicking on these things. And then because it's fear-inducing. People are curious, and so the views are going up, and because the views are going up, the AdSense money is going up, and so these people don't have an incentive to actually start to stop what it is that they're doing. However, the viewers are now eating it up, and now they're scared. They don't know what's going on, right? Maybe the person had a hard time in a relationship, and now you got somebody over here convincing you that that asshole from Tender is your twin flame. He was never your twin flame. He was just an asshole off the corner. And now you're over here in knots unraveling because you think that you have lost your past life partner when really you have been blessed, right? But because of these people and their really irresponsible way of practicing, because the US has not developed a culture around the governing of psychics, right, of spiritual workers and how they practice around specifically taking advantage of people, people are now taking advantage of people. And I got a real bone to pick with that. And then I also have a bone to pick with the ones of you that are ending up on those channels. Why? How are you doing this? Do you okay, all right, let me breathe. I have been communing with the spirits for years, and I have never had an evil encounter or have come close. However, you've got this entire pocket of people on the internet who are letting you know that this is their reality. Not saying that they're lying to you. I'm saying that they're letting you know that that's their reality. And then they're doing readings, pick a cards, and you're picking on them. Why on earth would you want to listen to somebody where that is their reality, where that is what they're communing with? And then you wonder why you walk away and you've got the heebie-jeebies because they got heebie-jeebies. You got heebie-jeebies because they're the heebie-jeebies. Stop messing with these people because these people do not have a code of morals and they don't have a code of ethics. My code of morals and ethics from being trained in the UK is to do harm to none. That is the first and only rule, to do harm to none. And then what happens from that is that people add things based off of their own personal practice, right? It starts with do harm to none, and then what they may do in their list of ethics is then list all the ways that they pledge not to do harm to you. Right? But that's the rule, to do harm to none. And when you are sending somebody away from your video and they've got anxiety, congratulations, you just did harm. You did harm to them. If you're sending people away from YouTube and they think they got dark forces and black magic on them, congratulations, you did them harm. If you're sending people away from YouTube and they think something is wrong with them, you did them harm. And what that shows me is that you have no code of ethics or moral character. Now, here's the thing, I will say this. A lot of people don't know that you're supposed to have them because people that are trained in the UK and the US, because the US lacks the culture due to lacking the laws, right? It's not taught or really known in this country that there is a rule to do harm to none. And so you have people that are just learning. But one thing in the UK, it doesn't matter if you learn at an official mystery school or if you learn in somebody's basement, you still walk away knowing to do harm to none. And the reason why you do harm to none is because it's punishable under the law should you do harm to somebody. Once a time, that was the death penalty. And so you got people here doing things that if they lived in the UK during that time, they would be prosecuted for. And watching what's happening on these social media sites, watching the things that people are doing, like it's mind-boggling. And not only that, it's cheapening the actual craft. There are people who are legitimate. There are people that have fought through and have worked through years of trauma and healing to get to where they are spiritually in order to then go back into the community to assist, to guide, to whatever. And you've got people who picked up a deck of cards 3 weeks ago who are scaring people shitless. And I have a problem with that because for something that should be used for enlightenment, for expansion, is being used to cause fear, to create doubt, and to disempower. And I don't like that very much. If you rock with Mystic Rain, I need you to agree with one thing. And this is a lot for me because I don't ask you to agree or take on anything that I say. I just give my opinions. But if we're going to rock with each other for real, I'm going to need this of you. Because if you can't give this to me, then we're not in alignment, and that's okay. You go your way, I go mine. But from this point forward, you need to agree with self, to the community, to the collective, to the universe that you will do harm to none. Now, that's the intention you set. Now, if you say something and someone runs off with a meaning that you did not mean, right? Because you cannot control how people receive a message. You can only control your intent behind a message. That's one thing. But if you are intending to create harm and to take advantage of other people, using spirituality as the venue and the road and the avenue, then we're not aligned and we're not meant for each other. So now that I finished yelling for a solid, 20, 30 minutes, I have finished running my mouth quite loudly, I would say. I'm going to let you go with that. If you like what you see, subscribe to this channel. And if we don't meet again, I'll see you next lifetime.